What's up everybody, welcome back to the lab. It's ill.Gates here with my new iPad DJ template. Boom! Very excited to bring this thing to you. I had so much fun programming it. What started as a casual request on the message boards for iPad versions of the template quickly turned into a total revolution of the way that I treated my DJ templates. Now, at first I was a little skeptical. iPad, for example, can't do knobs very well. You got to do all faders, push buttons, and XY pads. But I originally saw that as a limitation. But then when I started programming with all faders, buttons, and XYs, I realized how cool the iPad is as a controller. The latency, you can get the latency way down, and then XYs, you can do crazy things with XYs, like having my multi-effect selector on the XY pad really opened up a lot of possibilities. Using filters on the XY pad too was really cool. You can do a lot with filters on an XY, because if you have high pass on one axis and low pass on the other axis, then when you make a diagonal, it becomes mix, right? Because when you're mixing, you introduce first the mids quietly and then increase the volume as the highs and lows come in, and that's exactly what a crossing high and low pass filter does. And then you can balance it more towards the high end or the low end by moving your finger around, and then zero is up in the far outside corner, like either the top right on the one side or the top left on the other side. But you actually don't need volume faders if you have filters on an XY like that. You can do all of your mixing with the XY. I was stunned to find that out. So I've programmed, I originally thought I was only going to be able to program a version that was for use with an external mixer, but when I really started getting into programming with an internal mixer, I found that you can actually very capably do all of your mixing just on the iPad. So I've released two versions, and they're for PC and for Mac both, but really it's a pretty cool template. I was really surprised. Touch controllers had never really appealed that much to me until I started using them, and now I'm using them in my production, I'm using them for DJing. Like, it's really a very powerful tool. So yeah, here, let me show you how this bad boy works. Hello and welcome inside my iPad template. I apologize for the kind of funky screens I had to set up here to get a clean shot of the iPad without glare. It's a little awkward to get my hand in there, but hey, at least you can see the template, right? I'm not going to get into the details of setting up Touch OSC, loading presets, and getting Osculator to communicate between Touch OSC and your computer. If you just do a quick internet search, I'm sure you'll find that there are many places where you can get that information. So I'm just going to focus on showing you the features of the internal template, because the external template is basically the same, except for it doesn't have these gain controls or the cue, and the rest of the stuff is just a little bigger to take advantage of that extra space. One really challenging thing about programming for the iPad is that it's pretty small, and that you can't do knobs with a touchscreen. You're limited to faders, push buttons, and XYs. So I really had to kind of change my thinking when I programmed this thing, but it was a really rewarding process. So you'll notice there's no knobs. It's all XYs, faders, and touch buttons. And the faders that you have to be careful around, like the gains and the tempo over here, they're bright yellow to stop you from hitting them by accident. It's going to show up great in low lighting. If you do want to hit them, like you'll notice it's kind of difficult to touch them. If you do want to hit them, I recommend just clicking right on them, and then if you move your hand away, then you can get a very clear picture of where that fader is. And I made sure to make all the faders long, so the gain and the tempo, they're long faders representing a very kind of fine level of control. The gains are not like the gains on a DJ mixer. They're for just finely balancing the dominance of one track over another when you're mixing. So the tempo here, I went in and labeled everything with the grids and labels on everything so you can see what you're doing. But the tempo, the BPM settings are quite accurate, and you just click on it, drag your finger out, pick your BPM, and then let go in your desired BPM. So you notice the template is empty when you open it. That's because I prefer on-the-fly loading of clip packs from either the Ableton browser here on the left or from Finder, just with a quick Apple tab. So I'm just going to grab one of my tunes here with Bassnectar because it's got a nice beat loop that's pretty simple that we can use to demo. So you notice there's 4 cue points. Well, on my templates, the cue points are 1, 2, 3, and 4 down the outside 2 edges. And you'll notice there's some blank space around them to stop you from hitting them by accident. And then there are these punch-in effects here. Solo, which is basically like doing a hard cut on the crossfader on a DJ mixer. So you can use that to do transforms and stuff if you tap them. RE is reverse. ST is stop or slow down, DL is delay send, and BR is beat repeat. So let's see what those punch-ins sound like. So you can see that's the delay feedback and the delay filter that are controlled over here. Once again, I apologize for the clumsy beat repeats. My hands are in really awkward positions here. So some other effects you have, I'll just silence that with the filters. Some other effects you have are the looper, and the loop increments are marked very clearly on this looper fader. I had it on the XYs because it was originally part of my multi-effects rack on some of the other templates, but the XY made me rethink my approach to doing multi-effects, and I figured looper was just a basic enough effect that is used often enough that you would probably want to have separate control over it. So let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so you notice me basically doing the volume here with the filters. Well, I found out a really interesting thing when I started to put filter on an XY. And you can see you have a high pass on the horizontal axis and low pass on the vertical axis. So here, check it out. High pass and low pass. And what that means is that when you put it the opposite of dry, which is in. Dry on these things is always out and away because that you're not going to hit anything by accident doing that, and it's the easiest. Just I found gesture-wise, just a casting away was a good gesture for dry. But anyway, when you put it to the opposite of dry, you'll notice that it is basically like a volume. But it's better than volume because if you think about what a DJ does when they're mixing, when you're introducing a track, you introduce first a bit of the mids at a lower volume, and then as the track takes full dominance, you introduce the very, very high end and the very, very low end only at the end as you approach 0 on the volume fader. Well, that means, and I found after experimenting with this, that if you treat this horizontal axis here as volume, it sounds really smooth in the mix. Like, check it out. And then if you want to have a different kind of EQ balance than that, you can just drift to the top right or the bottom left. Check it out. So high balance is here, right? And then a lower balance would be coming from here. Yeah, you can see it sounds really juicy. Just as a little side note on the filters, I sassed them up a bit so they're not just simple Ableton filters. They're actually layered filters in parallel, and there's a cabinet on one of the parallel layers that serves to warm up the filters. So if you're like missing cabinet, don't stress up about it. It's just there to make the filters sound a little warmer and nicer. Okay, so the multi-effects, there's 5 effects, and they're organized in vertical rows on this XY pad. So at the extreme left and extreme right are 1 and 5, and I found it's quite easy to hit the other 3. So the effects are, the first one here, that's like a pumpy sidechain sort of effect that that you can use in the mix. It creates that, you know, kind of classic like wop 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 wop, and it will get the downbeats out of the way too if you're finding your drums are clashing. It's more for mixing than for playing effects. The next effect is a dirty high pass. The next one is a delay melter, which you achieve by scrubbing delay times that are less than 50 milliseconds. The next one up is a rhythmic gate, and then the last one is programmed by Moldover. He was nice enough to lend me the effect for the template. You can check out his work at moldover.com. He created the amazing Mojo controller and many other wonderful things. But I really like the effect, and he's a homie, so I asked him if I could use it. Alright, so let's hear how these effects sound when you're playing them on an XY. So that's them all individually, but you can do a lot of really cool things controlling them with an XY. And I actually, like I said, I rethought my approach to the multi-effects racks, and they're a lot more, the transitions between effects are a lot smoother, and it's made so you can just like swirl your finger around on that XY and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So here, check it out. But you can see that's like really versatile. I'm actually quite surprised how useful XYs are. So yeah, if you play around with it, I'm sure you'll find all kinds of cool little patterns and tricks, especially if you're combining the filter and the effects with the punch-ins. I'm not going to get into showing you every little routine I've developed with these. That's kind of more for you to figure out on your own and, you know, develop your own style. And then the last thing are these little cue buttons, and when you want to cue, you just click on them like a cue button anywhere else. They're small because you don't really need to play them, and they're up at the top because it's out of the way. So yeah, I'm sure that you'll find once you get the hang of this template that it's really quite powerful, and you don't even really need a DJ mixer at all with this. The internal mixing template is like slightly different, doesn't have the cue buttons or the gains. Everything else in here is a little bit bigger to take advantage of that space. But you know, I actually was having a go like mixing around my house, and you know, I did a mix from the bathroom once and stuff. It was pretty fun. You can get a pretty good range with the Wi-Fi. It's good for those 8-hour DJ sets so they don't have a private stage bathroom. But yeah, I really had a lot of fun with this template, and I think it's a very powerful tool. Played out with it a few times, loved it. Not really anything I would change. So thanks to everyone else who helped me out. Thanks to Trysil too. He helped me out with some of the testing too. He took it out to a few gigs. But yeah, it's really I think a lot of fun, and I think you're gonna have a great time with this template. Just be careful around those yellow faders. All right, have a good one, everyone. Thanks for watching. Peace.